afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our City of Little Rock Board of Directors agenda meeting, setting the agenda for March the 18th. I want to welcome those that are in attendance and those watching and streaming online. We'll first have our AmeriCorps 2025 proclamation. Vice Mayor, if you'll come join me. Once members of the board take this time to recognize our AmeriCorps members, AmeriCorps Week. We also see the city here, Little Rock and North Little Rock folks who are here with us today. Let's give them a round of applause. Whereas AmeriCorps is a national service program that engages thousands of Americans each year in addressing critical community needs, including education, disaster response, economic opportunity, environmental stewardship, and support for veterans and military families. And whereas AmeriCorps members and volunteers dedicate their time and talents to strengthening communities by fostering civic engagement, creating lasting change, and empowering individuals through service. And whereas the City of Little Rock currently hosts 2 AmeriCorps representatives, Seth Wyatt, the American Connection Corps Fellow, and Erica Kreiner, a Bloomberg Love Your Block Vista, both of whom are actively serving the city to enhance digital connectivity, community revitalization, and neighborhood engagement. And whereas AmeriCorps Week 2025 serves as an opportunity to recognize and celebrate the invaluable service of AmeriCorps members, alumni, and program partners who work tirelessly to build stronger, more resilient communities. And whereas the City of Little Rock commends AmeriCorps for its dedication to public service and encourages residents to recognize and support the individuals who have committed to serving others through this impactful program. Now, therefore, I, Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby proclaim March 9th through the 15th, 2025 as AmeriCorps Week. Thank you so much. We'll now have Seth, who works with the city as AmeriCorps Fellow, give a few remarks, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to thank you for recognizing all the hard work that people do around the city and AmeriCorps. The whole state is a recipient for all the hard work that volunteers and members from AmeriCorps do. And I know that the City of Little Rock, me and Erica, we work pretty hard, or at least we try to, and so does everybody else. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you want to do a picture? We want to get up and... Thank you.
Director Wire. A couple over here by Director Wire. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I see him all the time. Susan will now give the legislative update.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Directors, I'm just going to briefly go over some highlights for our legislative update. House Bill 1445, an act to prohibit certain restrictions on the regulation of short-term rentals. There has been no recent movement on this one. Next, House Bill 1481. This is to create the Anti-ATF Commandeering Act and to prohibit the provision of material aid and support for enforcement of federal firearms laws. We do have some concern over this one because it prohibits public employees to enforce federal firearms laws. It was recently amended so that public employees can enforce state firearms laws, but it still prohibits public employees from enforcing federal firearms laws. House Bill 1503 to amend the law concerning municipal regulations and to prohibit certain restrictions on the regulation of accessory dwelling units. This one passed out of Senate committee today, and we are still monitoring this one and are working on this one. Senate Bill 91 to provide that local governmental units shall have no authority to regulate or control the amount charged for a rental application fee or rental deposit for private residential or commercial property. This one has passed the Senate. It is now in House, City, County, and Local Affairs Committee, and we are monitoring that one. Senate Bill 376, this is to amend the Freedom of Information Act of 1967 and to amend the law concerning public meetings under the Freedom of Information Act of 1967. One of the key components of this one is to move from a public meeting being more than one to being more than two individuals. So we are monitoring this one. Senate Bill 394, to amend the law concerning the allocation, distribution, and use of revenues derived from a county's sales and use taxes for capital improvements. We have a lot of concern over this one because this concerns the turnback funding that we get from the county. The city of Little Rock receives around $60 million from the county, and so this could have a large impact on revenues to the city. So we are concerned about this one, and we are working on this one. It is in committee tomorrow, so we will be working with the Municipal League on this bill. Any questions on anything that was mentioned or on anything else? Yes, Director?
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Thank you, Susan. On House Bill 1503, which we have stated that we opposed, and I contacted my state rep who voted against it. And so my question is the our lobbyist supposed to contact the Little Rock folks and talk to them about these bills? Because that didn't happen.
Yes, and we'll make sure that that does happen.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Hines?
Susan, do you, on Senate Bill 394, can you get with me after we meet? I just want to find out when this is, and kind of what a better context of the bill and what the impacts would be.
Sure.
Is it that they're going to let the county have more control, or?
It sends it to a potential election so that a county could opt for an election so that the funds could go to the county
Versus a distribution from us?
versus it just being a turn back.
Okay, all right. I will probably, if I can make myself available, find out when this is going committee and speak on this, based on some interactions we're having with our current county government.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Understood.
All right, members of the board, as we know, we've been discussing it, discussing for quite some time during the budget season to discuss fire apparatus, fire equipment, particularly and fire capital expenses at the firehouses during the budget season and after the sales tax. And Director Peck has requested that as well. And so we're now at the point that we'll start having a lot of different policy discussions about capital expenses. After this presentation, we'll also have a session, I believe, in April, depending on when certain things happen with the code enforcement session as well, focused on any unused properties that the city has and what we could potentially do for it to increase reserves. So that'll be kind of coming up in the next policy discussions. Want to bring Chief Delphon Hubbard to the podium to give the presentation on, on this. And so just want to thank Director Peck, who has been working as well. Like I said, she made the request during the budget season. And a lot of this, you'll find out as well as we were preparing for the sales tax, the different needs we needed to have assessed and done. And we'll kind of walk through this, but just want to give, just share appreciation to Director Peck. Sure thing. Hold on a sec, Drake. Now you're on. You're on.
Testing. Okay, thank you. Mayor, as I told you this morning on our phone conversation, had a great meeting with Chief Hubbard yesterday, Chief Durham, and Susan Altrui, very, very fruitful. I also want to give a big thank you and shout out to birthday boy Willie Hinton. He was not going to be here today because it's his birthday, so I sort of begged and told him I would maybe jump out of a cake or something in a different setting. But thank you, Willie, for being here because you're an important piece of this. And yes, you know, in December, I did have a little temper tantrum, and sometimes you have to do that to get action. So I don't regret anything I did or said, and I'm so happy we've come to this point. Again, I'm going to make some comments later on. I had about a 14-page document that I drafted that I didn't distribute because I knew it wasn't accurate, but I think the chief's going to address some of those things, and then I'd like to make some comments afterward. Thank you.
Chief.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, and to members of this board. Thank you. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this opportunity for us to bring forth an issue I thought I was trying to bring to the attention of the entire board many, many years ago. However, we're here. With that being said, look at it now. You got me, Ollie? Okay. There are a few things that I want to obtain, bring to your attention, maybe create some discussion. We'll talk about some of the financial history associated with our facility, the condition thereof, some of the various concerns, such as the foundation, all the way down to some cosmetic items, and then some of the current projects that we're currently working on. So when I was hired as fire chief in January of 2018, one of the things that I promised and committed to this community and to the firefighters was I would make an assessment of our rolling stock, which are our fire trucks, and then our fixed assets. What are the conditions of our fire stations in which we have our firefighters working out of, but even more so living out of? And so in talking with some of my peers in Public Works, such as Grant Cox, he's been a great help. In that discussion, we found that the fire department had over $10 million in deferred maintenance. That's prior to Delphon Hubbard being named fire chief in 2018. However, I'm now the fire chief. I take accountability for that. I'm responsible for addressing it. And so that's what we're looking to do. So with that, we're constantly having conversation with city administration, Mayor Scott, in regards to the needs, the concerns of our fire facilities. And so as part of that, we were able to push enough for the 1.5 million of ARPA funds that this board, that we're so most grateful for, awarded us to address those repairs. And I provided you guys with an itemized list of the things that we did with that 1.5 million. We wanted to be shown as good stewards of every dollar we asked for. We want to show you that we need it and we can put it to use. And so each year since 2022, I've always made it my objective to make facility improvements as part of my budget presentation to this body. I asked for the burn building in my budget. It wasn't included. However, we made it happen. We created it through some of that 1.5 because of the need. It wasn't a pretty desire. But anything, as stated, anything that our firefighters have brought to our attention that has been reported and we have identified as a health and safety issue, this fire administration has always acknowledged it as an emergency, and we've addressed it as soon as possible. With that, this next slide, I just wanted to display to the board Our firefighters are doing their part. When there are maintenance issues, they are reporting them. They are submitted through the proper channels. And then from there, that's addressed by Grant Cox, John Honeywell, and his crew at Public Works. But as we could see, there was a small uptick in some areas and a decrease in other areas as it relates to maintenance requests. So some of the issues that we identified, we first identified the stations, working in conjunction with those personnel at the stations. When it came to parking lot and foundation issues, parking lot was considered somewhat cosmetic because we can still work through that. However, foundation, now we're talking about the structure and the stability and safety of it. And so I wanted to provide some photos there as exhibits to some of the conditions of some of our fire station parking lots. One of our stations, the one on Roosevelt, station number 6, directly across from State Fair, as Director Miller has notated, it actually needs to be demolished and rebuilt. According to the statistics that Grant has shared with me from Public Works, we spend somewhere between $8,000 to $10,000 in maintenance on that station alone per year. And I think that, you know, we got to start weighing the cost here. Is it worth to continue to put money into an old structure that's continuously giving us issues? Then the second item we looked at was flooring and carpet, the replacement thereof. Some of the flooring has been there since the original building was put in place. In the midst of making those assessments, there was asbestos and lead identified in the flooring and in the paint, which caused us to immediately stop. We're working with, it's brown field instead of brown stone. It's a grant program to assist us with the removal of those issues. None of them were classified as life-threatening or hazardous to where we had to remove those firefighters from that station at this time. But the work halted until we can get that addressed first, and then we'll move forward with the replacement of the flooring and carpet at those identified stations. And then we looked at drywall and paint, interior and exterior. There was quite a bit of damage to walls for various reasons that we have to address just for the appearance of the station. And then you'll see some of that, those concerns. Some of the stations we were able to pressure wash with the 1.5 million. Some we did not because of just simple the amount of money that was available to address these repairs. And then you had ceiling tiles and AC vents that need to be replaced. Some were rusted out, that needs to be replaced. And you'll see their picture there in those exhibits. We were able to replace all of the ceiling fans, as you'll see in the photo there, where some of them had blades missing. For whatever reason, they're not there. We were able to replace that with the 1.5, replace some ceiling tiles in some stations, but it was just simply not enough to cover all of these issues. And then I think right here is where we're talking about furniture, cosmetic issues. We were able to address a lot of this as far as with the 1.5, with replacement of a lot of the chairs inside of our stations. The park benches you'll see out in front of each of the stations in your wards, you won't see that wood anymore. What we did was we replaced them with a strong wrought iron with the word Little Rock Fire engraved in it to bring some sense of pride to the department, to that station. You may see one or two wooden benches still in place, but they were in pretty good condition. And so, lastly, I'll leave you with some of the current projects we're currently working on. This is just through some of the funding that we have within our budget, juggling those that we prioritize as life safety, all the way down to some cosmetic issues. But much of this is sort of like what we have to do. It's not optional. With that being said, are there any questions?
Well, I know Director Peck wanted to give some comments, and I'll get some after her.
Okay, thank you. And Chief, thank you. And what really opened my eyes to some of the problems that were actual visits to the fire stations. And so I guess this started maybe in mid to late December, almost 3 months ago. And I was dumbfounded that we were asking the men and women who protect us on a daily basis to live in some of these situations. I realize it's a money thing. I realize that the deferred maintenance is at least $10 million. You've addressed a lot of the things, but some of the, and we've had this open and honest conversation yesterday. The reporting system seems to not be working well. I'm not exactly sure how to make it better. I know that building services and smart sheets, this is the way that things are turned in. But when you prepared that binder for all of us, it was a little bit difficult to see what had been fixed, what hadn't been addressed from
Correct.
2022 to 2024. This is helpful, what you've done, but I think there's still a lot of things that you didn't mention that I would like to mention. And it really hit home after I visited several of the fire stations and saw the living conditions. And then when I was at the graduation last week and the recruits became rookies, you know, there was something in my heart that just hurt, thinking, okay, here are these gung-ho rookies, and I hope you don't have to report to Station 15 or Station 11. And it's just, some of the conditions are deplorable, beyond cosmetic. And I want to mention something in a second that Director Adcock and I have been working on. But the other things that seem to me, you've already addressed the VA tile floors. I think at least 9 stations have vinyl asbestos tile floors. I know
correct.
Central has one, and it's peeling. Those are dangerous. That releases toxic fibers. It can cause scarring of the lungs. Many of the stations reported mold, moldy air vents, moldy ceiling tiles, flooding in different stations. As somebody highly allergic to mold, that's not good. I mentioned to you yesterday the Plime events that remove the carcinogens that are either not attached or not working, the ongoing problems with rodents and pests. And I asked you if we had a monthly contract. I know at home I have a monthly contract for my HVAC system for pests, and every month they come in and make sure things are working. And do we do that? I know that, you know, ant infestation is one thing, but mouse and rat feces in attics, that's another thing. That's just unacceptable. You've talked about the foundation problems. I know one report in 2024, there were a couple of generators that were out of service. 2 or 3 stations reported stair treads that were coming unglued that would present a trip hazard. And I mean, the firefighters are resilient. They do basic repairs on their own when they can, sometimes with their own money, re-gluing those. But just some of those simple things. We've talked about the engine bay doors, and I think Chief Durham reported there are 59. Some of those open, some don't, some do it sporadically. That's how the apparatus gets out. That seems to be something we need to address. A lot of the older stations have plumbing issues, drains that won't drain. I won't mention what happened at Station 15 because I did that, and I don't want to go there. Sheetrock damage, the carbon monoxide issue we talked about at Station 24. I think that's our newest station. The roof leaks there. Again, exposed wires hanging from the ceiling. It's just, I mean, you can't even believe it unless you go to some of those older stations. And it is, speaking personally, I'm just not going to sleep well until we address those. It's not your fault. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus.
No.
But I think something is, and maybe Grant can address this or Director Honeywell can. The reporting system does not seem to be working. Some of these things are turned in year after year, and I don't know if somebody just says, well, we don't have the money. I don't know what the roadblock is, but I'm optimistic that we can start addressing some of these things. After the meeting yesterday, I had a great talk with the mayor. May I share this, or do you want me not to share it? I've already opened the door?
You already opened the door?
Okay, I've opened that door. So I am going to ask,
Well, hold on.
okay, don't open the door. Okay,
I'll handle it.
okay. You promise?
As soon as you get done, I want.
Okay, I'm not quite done. Okay, so that was that part. The other big thing that Director Adcock and I have been working on, especially Joan, is involving the community to adopt a fire station. I know a couple of neighborhoods already do this. I know that there are countless people out there who loves a firefighter, who doesn't love a firefighter, and they don't want to see them living in these conditions. Whether it's new lounge chairs, you saw the state of a lot of the furniture, or a concrete pad where they could set up a grill and spend some time outside when they're not on a call. New kitchen equipment, bed frame. A lot of the dormitories I went to, there are bed frames missing parts. The HVAC systems, some of them work. There are splits in places. I think it was at Station 15. There are window units that don't quite fit, so there's cardboard everywhere and duct tape everywhere. And we wouldn't want anybody in our family to live in those situations. And I bet you, Kevin Howard, that a lot of those stations wouldn't pass code. Seriously. But we're asking these people to live there. So I'm not going to get emotional. Okay, your turn, Mayor. But back to Joan. So Joan has already had a conversation with somebody about Fire Station 2. I just know that if we make a concentrated effort, just like we do to adopt a street or adopt a park and adopt a fire station, that we as a community can come together and make those houses a better place for our firefighters to live. And I'm just determined to do that. So I hope when we get that rolling that all of you ward-specific directors and you at-large directors will help us get the word out so the community can support our firefighters. And I think Susan's going to help set up a 501c3, so we have a plan there. I'm not mad at you. I know I can get a little emotional. I'm looking at you, Chief Hubbard.
No,
I know this is deferred maintenance. I get it, but I can't help but get passionate about it. And it's because I went there, and I know we all care. And if you all don't believe me, I'll take you to one of the fire stations, and you can see it with your own eyes. It's unconscionable, and I'm just not going to sit back and have those men and women live in those conditions.
no, I'm not going to refute any word that you say. As I share with anybody I make contact with, I don't think there's nobody on this board or this city administration with the mayor that dislike firefighters. We know that we have that support. That's the reason I thought about the mold issue. Each time we've had an employee bring forth with us about mold, we've had assessments made by environmentalists. And each time it has come back that there's no mold present enough to the level to be a threat to their safety. Those kind of things are important to me. Just as responsive as I am to each of you on this board and to this city administration and to this community, I'm double responsive to those firefighters whenever they bring issues, such as the rodent issue. That's a great concern to me. We have a pesticide service available on an annual basis. However, with a situation like this, that's an emergency. We call for immediate service. We'll pay for that cost. So I don't want to say anything that's going to go against anything you're saying because we're on the same team. I think I appreciate this board. I appreciate the city administration for the way in which you support the fire department.
Director Hines, and I'll share some of the stuff with Director Peck.
Thanks, Chief.
I'm sorry, Director Hines, I apologize. Push it again, I'm sorry. There it is. There you go.
Thank you, Chief. I was curious, and I didn't see it on this report. I think it was in Cappy's that she sent to us. And it's even more shocking, our two newest stations, 23 and 24, that we've got some issues that there was one in 23 where there's no exhaust fans in the bathrooms, in the showers.
I did read that. I'd have to follow up on that.
Well,
that's a construction issue.
Not that I'm some code expert, but I'm trying to figure out how we got a CO on that building.
Yes.
Because that's a requirement. We pay an architect to design the building that's supposed to meet code, And I'm a little shocked that we had something pass inspection that didn't meet codes, it seems like. So, I was just curious about that one particular deal. There were a few other things there, but it's kind of shocking to hear that Station 24 has already got roof leaks. I think my caveat here is, and this predates even my tenure on the board, and it seems to be the merry-go-round that this board and previous administrations have been under, is that we continue to use one-time monies, mainly bond issues, to do maintenance and repairs, which are ongoing expenses and shouldn't be used for one-time funds. But it seems to me and I know that there was a bond issue that was done, and what's the station out, on East Roosevelt, by my office, right by Springer? Virgil, what?
13.
13? I can
Yes, sir.
remember when that station was remodeled, it was probably redone. It was one of our worst stations, and it was probably redone. I know it dated, I've been on the board now 14 years. It was probably redone 16 or 18. I know we did a bond issue to
It was
address-
prior to my
It was
term.
oh, no,
It
it's
was,
it's
no,
prior to my being
that's
on.
where I'm lining it up. It's somewhere around 2015, 2016.
But I think this board, we need to look in the mirror as to why we can't get off the merry-go-round. I think staff and the mayor and Public Works, we need to look at a different way to give the fire department ownership of their facilities. I know having centralized responsibility, but firefighters are pretty handy, and I think if they're given some leeway to do some of their basic maintenance, almost like a tenant would, and maybe, I know that we have got a facilities fund that is woefully inadequate to maintain even all the other city facilities. And again, this goes to our parks, this goes to everything. We're real good at building stuff, but horrible at maintaining it over time. And I think because it's just a lack of focus on our part as board members to get off the merry-go-round and to put it as a budget emphasis, that we should have some type of capital reserve fund specific for building maintenance, firefighter maintenance, so we don't we keep getting into this deal, and the only way we seem to be able to dig our way out, and really it's just getting our head above water, is to, use one-time funds. I mean, I'm grateful that we've had them, but I think we've got to do this as a board to address this in a long-term manner. That's just kind of my thoughts on this, because it's not just the fire department. The fire department's probably the most egregious, because we actually have employees that live in these firehouses. It's the same merry-go-round we've been on with our apparatus and police cars. We can't get out of we try to go to a fleet replacement plan, and then we start it up, and then it stops. And, I think a lot of us on this board think we take steps to address it, but somehow it gets lost in the mix. So that's just my thoughts. I appreciate you're right up on what you're doing with the funds, and like anything, we've got more problems than we've got funds to fix it seems like. But I think we really got to address our priorities from a budgeting standpoint to start digging out of this. And it's something we can do, but it's a process that I think it's going to take some focus from this board to make it an emphasis. Thank you.
Director Wired?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for bringing us this presentation tonight. I have 4 fire stations in Ward 7. I went to 14 and 18, couldn't gain access to 11 and 24 for some reason. But 14 seemed to be in fairly good shape. I didn't get to spend enough time with those guys because they got an alert and they left. And so I didn't have enough time to spend with them, but I spent quite a bit of time at Fire Station 18. And one of the things that they brought to my attention, and I'd never paid any attention to it, Mableville West that goes in front of the fire station is 4 or 5 lanes through there.
That's correct.
Plus we have a school down at the end of the hill. We have businesses along there, and there's quite a bit of traffic that goes through there. And I don't believe we have proper emergency lighting at that fire station. We've got a little bitty light on each end of where the fire station is, And when they're coming out, I don't think that's a big enough lighting to let people know as they're coming over the hill, east to west, that, we're about to leave or we're coming in or whatever. That's a busy, busy road now, and I think we have to worry about our citizens coming through there as well as our fire department coming out of that fire building. So I think we need to address the emergency lighting on the outside. I've looked at some. I know University's got some really good lighting for fire trucks
Right.
coming in and out, and Highway 5 has got some good lighting, but it's very small lighting. I don't think it's enough to alert anybody that there's fixing to be something coming through there. So I think that needs immediate attention. And I went into the facility, and there's a lot of cracked walls. I mean, where the fire stations reside and inside the building, there's a lot of cracked walls that are there. The pantry area, which they said the city came in and painted the walls, and they'd rather had the pantry area painted. If you go in and look in there, it's pretty sad. There's a vent in the kitchen that needs to be replaced or something needs to happen to it. The ice machine has got a pretty substantial pipe that drains water, and it comes across the floor and it just goes into a drain in the floor. I don't know if seems like to me that might be a code violation for the way that thing works. The floors are in bad shape, and I noted that Fire Station 18 was one of those that asbestos could be an issue. So they talked about the lights over the table. As you come in the door, you've got the kitchen to the right, and to the left, you've got sort of an open area where the guys hang out. They do paperwork on the table. And the lights, there's no way to dim them. They're just all on. And apparently during the night, those lights have to stay on. They'd like to see some sort of mechanism where they come in the room and the lights come on, or something that's not so stark as they come in to that room. They did mention that. So, structural problems, that needs to be looked at. You address the parking lot. The parking lot in the back is almost gone, where they park the cars. It's got a stream that runs through there all the time, and it's eating away all of the concrete, so that needs to be addressed. Station 24, I was not able to get in there, but I heard some problems with carbon monoxide. Has that been resolved?
That is currently being addressed, yes.
So
When
is
it was brought to our attention about the stove issue and the CO that was dispersed from that particular stove, that is being addressed immediately. That's what we would consider a life safety issue.
Yeah, okay. And 14, that's where the bats were there.
That is correct.
And they were in the process of doing this magic where they had some sort of fencing or something around the tower. So when they went out, they couldn't come back in. And so they were in the process of figuring out how to shoo them out.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that that's been taken care of, because I believe you show it in your documentation
That is
right
correct.
now. But it seemed like we were on top of that. We were trying to get them out for quite some time. It was under pest control activity, that kind of thing.
That was not an overnight process. I
Right.
think by the time somebody on this board mentioned it, about the bats at 14, we was already maybe several
Yeah.
weeks into addressing that. We first had to get with wildlife, the zoo,
Yeah.
about how do you address this? Who are the proper people to remove these particular animals? And so it's been like a phase process, and we're still talking about it today because we're in the final phases of that.
Yeah, that's
that
what
process.
I understood. But
Yeah.
the firemen knew that the city was trying to take care of them, so that was important to me. The other thing I would note is that at the fire stations, they make a list, they send it to somebody, and they wait for it to happen. I think that's what Cappy's addressing.
Yes.
We don't know how that mechanism works, so if we could identify maybe how to do that, what needs to be taken care of, information back to the firefighters,
Correct.
Okay, this is, we hear you, you know, it's on our list. They just continue to turn in the same item over and over again. So some communications with them might help some. But they were optimistic. They were good to talk to, happy to have a job, happy to serve the citizens of Little Rock. And so if we can just make their home life away from home a little bit better, I think maybe that would be a good step in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor Scott. I'll be quick. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Director Peck, and also Director Adcock for working on this. Just a couple of things. I want to reiterate what Director Hines said. I agree with him that we can't let our focus get lost on this. And when I look at the list of firehouses that are in Ward 3, and I think about one that is in a fairly affluent neighborhood, and they have done some fundraising for that firehouse. I think that's the only reason it's not listed in one or two of these
Absolutely.
categories. So as we talk about, and we have firehouses all over the city in a variety of demographic areas, and as we talk about this project of asking people to step up, I think that's nice that we do that, but I don't think we can do anything to abdicate our responsibility for our first responders. It's like having a bake sale at the PTA or something. So I would like to know if that is only going to be for extras. I don't know if y'all have determined that now, but we really can't abdicate our responsibility for first responders and not ask the citizens to cover that, in my opinion.
No, I think that was an idea from Director Peck, and similar to the LRPD has a foundation that just takes care of extra needs that for the fire department have a foundation. Yeah. Director Adcock, then Director Peck.
Yes. Back years ago, I made visits to several apartment complexes when we was looking at rental inspection. And I felt I was doing the same thing when I went to some of the fire stations. And I kept thinking, I just hope that Kevin Howard doesn't come by here because he might have a code officer with him. And some of the fire stations would not pass code inspections. So we need to keep the inspectors away from the stations for a little while. Our idea also was involve the community. Yes, the mayor is going to find us some money to do some of these structure things and repair things. But with the inside, you all know your children, when they come home, how excited they are if a fireman has come to their school to see them, and they all light up and everything. Let's bring the children in. Let's bring the parents in. Let's bring the business community in. I called one, I guess you can call a business, Mr. Day, and said, we're going to do some things with your fire station. And he said, count us in. I went to the doctor the other day, and the doctor said that he and his church had just had some help from a fire station, and how proud they was of the firemen that came over and helped the church. And he said, if I only knew of some way we could repay them. And I said, I do. And he looked kind of surprised, and I said, I'll bring it to you tomorrow. We have a whole list of things that this particular fire station needs, and I'd like to share it with you. So I went back to his office yesterday, and he got all of his information, so I'm waiting to hear from him what he wants to do as being so happy with his firefighters. But I think we need to bring the community in and not just ask them just for money, but ask them to get involved with their firefighters. I had a school recently that called me and said, could you have a firefighter come to our school and talk, and also a police officer? And they went, and the kids were so excited. And sometimes we forget about the little things. We look at all the big things, and Mayor, we want, this million and this million. But let's bring in the community. Let's bring in the children, the bake sales, and those kinds of things. We are a big city. Let's have a little heart, like the people in small cities, when you get the community involved. And that's what Cappy and I are talking about. Bring the community. When I told you I wanted to talk to you about this, I baked chocolate chip cookies and invited you to my house. And I noticed that Director Peck outdid me. She invited you to trios. But let's get everyone involved. Let's get the newspapers involved. There's nothing wrong with asking for help for someone who gives so much as our firefighters do. So I'm going to be the cheerleader out here. So if you have a business, if you're watching this today and you have a business, don't wait for one of us to come and talk to you. Please call us and tell us what you want to do. We've got the list all prepared. I see Mr. Dater's out there, and I'm sitting up here taking notes on what business people, Mr. White, and I'm going to take notes so I can come by and see you and let you know how you can have an opportunity to help, to show the firefighters in this city how important they are to you and your businesses. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Peck, and then
I'll
Director
be-
Phillips.
I'll be very brief. And, it's a morale issue, I think, also, if you're living in one of those stations that has some serious problems. And I completely agree with Director Webb. We can't abdicate our responsibility. But the things that Joan and I are talking about are more cosmetic, amenities, like a basketball goal so they can, shoot hoops afterward. Or like at 22nd and Peyton, I put a bike repair station out there so kids could fix their bikes, those sorts of feel-good things. And I don't want any other city employee to think that I don't value them as much. But I think there's a big difference between somebody that must live in these fire stations when they're on duty. That's the big difference. And I will say that I was embarrassed watching those recruits, now rookies, walk across that floor, and I just thought, oh, please go to a new fire station, go to a new fire station. But that's all. I agree completely with you, Kathy. And we just got to do a better job, you all. We have to.
Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation, and
Yes, sir.
you and your team for all the work y'all do to keep us safe. Mayor, my question is, or statement is probably for you or for the benefit of the board. I hear everyone's comments about getting the constituents involved, and I agree. But we tried to get them involved, and they voted no. So that's just a reminder that we had a lot of money allocated to these issues. I see the chief shaking his head, yes, that a lot of these issues would have been addressed. But our citizens said no. So from a practical perspective, I want the public, I haven't forgot about it. It has affected how I live life. But I want to make sure that the public remembers that when we're talking about, well, we got to do this, we got to do this. Well, we tried to do those things. And the city said, no, we don't want you to do those things. So I want to reiterate that for the benefit of the discussion. Secondly, Mayor, from a practical standpoint, I know a lot of the issues that you mentioned here are already being addressed.
Yes, sir.
And then there was a couple there that had some question marks by them that money hadn't been allocated for those. Am I reading that correctly?
That is correct.
So, Mayor, if we were to try to address this practically, is that,
I'm going to address that here
are
shortly.
you going to handle that? Okay, all right, well, thank you.
Thank you. First and foremost, just want to take time and appreciation for leadership of Chief Hubbard and the entire men and women of Little Rock Fire Department. Also want to share appreciation to Director Peck and her ability to be a part of this process and help as we move alongside the entire city board. First and foremost, this entire city board sees, demonstrates, and votes to support the Little Rock Fire Department and the Little Rock Police Department. Those two departments represent 60% of our $331 million budget that this board votes for day in and day out. As we all know, we've seen historic raises for both fire and police, and that equates to millions of dollars. And so what I really want to share just globally so we all understand, because while today we're talking about fire, the entire city has about $50 million in deferred maintenance that started before my administration, started before Director Hines' administration. And the reason why at the end of the day is this city has not had a fleet replacement program for police and fire. The city has a lot of old buildings, old buildings that takes a lot of money just to redo and renovate over a period of time. And so we as a city have to prioritize, one, the people first, making certain that our firefighters are well paid, that we spend every chance we get with Willie, $2 million here for fire apparatus and $2 million there. I mean, and things are on the way because this city board voted for many different things in the 2022 bonds and what we do for the budget. So members of the board, we prioritize it. However, we are in a merry-go-round of what happens is that we have not been able to keep up with the maintenance cost of the old building. That's another reason why here in a few weeks, everybody's, we've already cut our budget to the bone and there's always room to cut more, but we got to make some strategic shifts. And so that may mean there may be some buildings that we need to sell and that we can put into a reserve account to create a revolving kind of internal loan fund for capital expenses for police and fire. One thing that's an idea, Director Campuris is aware of this as well as Director Phillips. We're working on a potential, and City Attorney Carpenter, we're working on a potential sustainable energy district that deals a lot with HVAC and chill water assets. Of the $50 million in deferred maintenance, $24 million of the $50 million is in HVAC. If you ever, we spent a lot of money at Willie Hinton, but just sit quiet at Willie Hinton, even though East Hardin did a great job where we had the graduation, just sit quiet and you'll hear all of the air conditioning units that sounds horrible. And so this is a global issue that we have. However, we do have some solutions for the time being in the event that we can get some things going with the Sustainable Energy District and help create this fleet replacement fund. That's more of a long-term issue that we're working towards. In the short term, I've talked with many of the board members as well and shared, this is what Director Peck was speaking to earlier, is that we're gonna come before the city board with the ordinance to deal with some emergency fund issues, clearly prioritizing fire. We're looking at somewhere between, and we're gonna sit down with Chief Hubbard and also not Chief, but Director Peck has kind of shared some different things of what she's seen, and we're all working together. But somewhere between $1 million and $2.5 million, we're gonna put towards fire. That we know we've been having to work towards this. That's the reason why we included in the sales tax, and we already had a lot of this information because we were preparing for the sales tax. Hopefully it would have won, and we could have implemented the fire station revolving fund then. But in addition to that, we got some other housing issues that board members are aware of. There's some parks issues that board members are aware of, and we're gonna really dip into those reserve funds to do that, and some other things that board members have shared individually together. But I believe we can cut into this $10 million deferred maintenance by, again, we've already cut into it because this city board voted to allocate $1.5 million into it, and that's already being spent. So really about $8.5 million when it's all said and done. But we're gonna put somewhere between $1 million and 2.5. We'll come together, make sure we get the best bang for our buck. And so that's the reason why Public Works has to look at all these things, because when you purchase something for HVAC or purchase something, we try to get the economies of scale when we're making the purchases for the entire city, because that's what we're doing when you try to run this operation. But I do believe what Director Peck and Director Adcock for the cosmetic stuff, yeah, we definitely can have a foundation. The stuff that we're gonna always take care of our people no matter what. That's the reason why we pay them well and won't always pay them more. We're going to always handle that as we move forward, but that's because of this city board voting that way, and I think we can move forward. So I just want to thank Director Peck again. Want to thank Chief Hubbard as we move forward. But again, these things happened before many of us got here, but the best way to address it is having a fleet and a capital expense revolving fund. That takes money, and so we got to figure out how to get the initial capital investment to make some interest income on that so it can continue to grow for the long term. And so that's the strategy to get out of the merry-go-round as we move forward. And so we think we got a potential solution with the Sustainable Energy District. Director Campuris, Director Phillips, you all are way more versed on it, but we can keep moving forward on that. But I think that's going to be a pathway to help with a lot of our deferred maintenance in the city. Thank you so much. We'll now go to the agenda. One more thing, Director Peck. You got to press it one time, then, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because it's Willie's birthday and I asked Willie to be here,
Happy birthday
No, I don't want you to
oh.
sing to him.
Oh, okay.
But you can sing to him. But I wanted Willie to address briefly Fleet. I know we have 5 new fire trucks coming online, I think, here in a month or so. But we're going to find ourselves in the same situation. And I asked Willie to come, even though it was his birthday. So Willie, would you please address that for us?
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and Director Adcock. I heard you baked something for Chief, so I'm looking for mine, and you invited Chief to Trio, so I'm looking for my invite.
I got you.
Okay. I believe you.
I did feed him.
So that all of you know, one of the things that Bruce asked me to do when I came on board was to keep a revolving 5-year plan for him, and I did that. And I've shared that with Bruce every year that he was here. Now, some of y'all didn't get to see that because he had to prioritize other things. But I can tell you straight out, for public safety, current cost, $5.5 to $6 million a year. One year it might be $3.5 million to fire. One year it might be $3.5 million to police, and the balance to the other one. On a rotating year basis, somewhat, but that's what it cost. I do a 5-year replacement plan update every year for the general fund, every department. It's $10 million for all of them. $10 million a year for all of them. So y'all should know that. And anytime you want to see what that looks like, just pick up the phone and call me. I can send it to you at any time. So, but specifically for fire, we do have 5 other apparatuses arriving in March here. And then in mid-26, we have another 7 apparatuses arriving. This is because of the bond fund that was, bond funds that was approved in 22. And then in 27, we have 2 other apparatuses arriving. And both of the, one is going to be a hazmat unit, and the other one is a tiller truck, which is the most expensive aerial that you can buy. So my plan was, if the tax had passed, was to use the little time that we have before we have to start rotating that money between fire and police again every year, was to get police up to speed so that when we got past 27, we can go back to the 2.5, 3, whatever it was, between police and fire. So there is a plan. It's expensive. There is no fleet replacement money. And I think that all of you know that you're going to have to address that. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Willie. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. But again, board members, I want to make sure we just heard that great news. We got 5 apparatuses that are coming in March. We got 7. That's because of what the work of this city board. Just it takes time when you're getting this. That 5. Willie, what's just the range of that cost? Well, just a range. You don't have to be totally accurate.
The pumpers cost $1 million. That's the trucks that sprays the water. The aerials cost $2 million. Hazmat costs $2 million as well.
No, but the total are we saying?
The total that we spent, $19 million.
All right, thank you so much. That's $19 million, everybody. I want to make sure we're doing what we need to do. It just takes a lot, but as we think through strategically, you know, that's the reason why we're looking at these city buildings that we potentially may sell or get developed and create some other interest income, because we're not talking about $1 million to do things right. As we shared, in this city is $50 million of deferred maintenance, $24 million of that is in HVAC. Deferred maintenance, just because we just have an old complex of buildings, but we're going to work to get this all done. Getting to the agenda, Director Hines, I think you had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask that items 14, 17, and 27 be held separate.
14,
17 and 27. 14 and 17 are related to each other anyway. They need to be grouped together. But I know we're going to have some folks come talk to us, so held those separate. And 27, that's the stormwater manual. We'll
Mayor.
hold that separate.
14, 17, and 27 will be held separate.
And then I'd like a presentation on 7, please.
And we'll get a presentation on 7. Then I'll,
Mayor,
think, Tom, you wanted to share something?
yes, Mayor, the agenda doesn't have this on it, but at the meeting next week, there will be the hearing on whether to remove commissioners from the Tall Timbers Recreation Improvement District Number 3. It was originally set earlier, but we couldn't get the notice to them in time, so y'all did a resolution to put it on for this meeting, the 18th, and that's not listed in your agenda today, but that's a requirement you've got to have, and we've given legal notice, so we got to follow. Yes, they have been. We sent them notice before for the meeting, I think on the 4th, and we gave it to FedEx, but it didn't get there without us. So we sent it by the U.S. Postal Service, and it was there the next day.
All right, thank you, Nick. Nicholas, I'm sorry.
So number 7, we're just updating some clerical items, changing titles, updating titles, and then removing the provision for having a office within the city of Little Rock. Those are the only changes to the investment policy we're making. Everything else is compliant with, and even the changes are compliant with state law and the requirements of the state law.
Thank you, Director Hines. Director Computers?
I'd like a discussion on 17, please.
On 17. All right, if, Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mayor, board members. Number 17 is Z9500-D. The owner of the 24.28 acre property located at 3708 Garrison Road is requesting that the property be reclassified from R2 Single Family District to AF Agricultural Forest District. This house contains a 14,000 square foot single-family residence. The rezoning would allow for the continued use of this as a single-family residence with the agricultural forestry designation. AF is not out of character for this area, and I will say that I think Director Hines said it right. There was much opposition to this at Planning Commission. They are opposing this, from the way I understand it, is there is a covenant that is on this property, which is a civil matter that they would have to work out. But they had originally come to the Planning Commission and they wanted to rezone this to have events at this location. There was much opposition that came to the Planning Commission. It was deferred at that time. During the interim, they had decided that the commercial aspect, the event aspect of this wasn't something that they wanted to push. They really want to have a single-family home there, but they also want the ability to raise chickens, other farm animals. From the individual that's buying the property, she has a restaurant and she would like to use some of the offerings that they raise on this farm as more of a farm-to-table piece.
No, I know. But I mean,
think Director Pierce has. Yeah, you got it. I turned it on already.
thank you. I have no idea why we would take a home in the middle of a residential area and turn it into an agriculture and farm property. Can you give me a good rationale for it? And then what else could they do with this property if we gave them this designation down the line?
Well, to answer your first question, why we would do that, I think that was the applicant's decision to do that. I think that was, they wanted to do they wanted to raise animals. They wanted to have, again, that farm-to-table aspect to it. So the just the R2 wouldn't allow them to do that. The
But go back
project
to
change.
my question, why would we as a board want to take an established neighborhood and then say to someone in the middle of an established neighborhood, we're now going to allow you to have raised farm animals, I guess chickens, pigs, whatever else they want to raise. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So what would be the rationale if I said to Kathy Webb, she wants to take a block in the Heights and turn it into someone who wants to take the side yard and put chickens and raise farm animals there? What's the rationale to that? I mean, I'm just trying to say, try to say why we're doing it to someone outside our this is extraterritorial.
Yes, sir. You could probably throw a rock and be outside of what our ETJ is. Yes, sir. But the rationale behind that, I guess it would be to allow someone that is on a larger piece of property to use it in a way that wasn't just single family.
But are the other lots out there? Are there other lots out there equally this size? Or
Yes, there are very large lots, very very large homes, very very expensive tracts that are in that area.
so we could be a month from now having someone else saying, "I want to raise horses on my property," and we'd say yes. You'd say yes.
If they were zoned that way, yes, sir.
But they're not zoned that way right now.
Currently, yes.
And
They're
this
zoned R2.
And this is an established neighborhood.
Mhm.
So we're going to make this established neighborhood now. We're going to give them permission to allow someone to come in there and raise farm animals.
That is what that's what the request is, yes, sir.
Okay. So going back to Kathy Webb now in the Heights, who's got a side yard, would you do that in the Heights?
It would depend on how big the lot was, I guess. And again, I don't know if I would do this myself. This is I think this is their option to do some of the things that they were originally planning without the event space aspect, without having parties or dinners at this space.
Well, but I mean, sometimes I think we do things in the extraterritorial area that we wouldn't do to Kathy Webb in the Heights. And my thought is that if I had an established neighborhood and someone came in and said, "Oh, we're going to make this agricultural," and that could lead to X, Y, and Z, why would I want to vote for that?
I guess that's a good question, yes, sir.
Well,
Well
but you've got to answer the question because you just said on here, I approve it.
Well, we approved it as our recommendation was approval. I mean, we looked at it as a larger lot. We looked at it differently than what it would be in the Heights. And there is AF designation around this area as well.
There's what?
There's agriculture farming designation around this area.
But not in these two gated neighborhoods.
Not in this. I don't think there's anything
Director
touching.
Capiris, Director Hines just reminded me of something that has been shared in the legislative update. All of this could become mute.
It could.
Not mute, moot. I'm glad I caught myself.
Maybe
guys.
I need to mute.
Yeah. So I guess, Mr. Copper, because there's a active piece of legislation that will take away the city's ability to regulate anything in the extraterritorial. Say it again. ETJ. Y'all got it right. ETJ.
Yep. Our 3 mile limit outside the city limits.
So this is. I mean, we may want to. I mean, even if it passes or fails, we're not gonna have any authority once it passes at the legislature. Is that correct?
The language I've read so far would take away our ETJ authority.
So we may, I'll confer with the attorney and, you, Brad.
Yes, sir.
And Susan and others. We may, I'm not gonna make that comment, but between now and Tuesday, I'll think about some things.
Yes, sir.
All right. Because we don't have any authority, and it looks like it's about to pass.
Right.
And you may want to visit with the owner to see which direction they want to go with it. They may not even be aware of the legislation.
Yes, sir, I will.
Mayor, one aspect of your questions and your comments and Dr. Campuris's comments
But,
is that-
Mr. Turk, let's just talk about it after the meeting. I don't want us to get any,
I have something on this same item.
is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Director Wyatt.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jordan, what other uses under AF are there? Because I know what the neighborhood is trying to avoid, and that is, they don't want, a business ran like it was ran before. Is there not an item under AF that would allow them to, do catering, et cetera?
Yes, ma'am, I'm going to read from our Code of Ordinances. So the permitted uses are permitted in AF, Agricultural Forestry District, single-family residences together with the usual accessory uses, agriculture and forestry operations to include the raising of livestock and poultry, governmental or private recreational uses including but not limited to golf courses, tennis courts, swimming pools, playgrounds, day camps, and passive recreational open space, and a plant nursery. The conditional uses are agricultural processing, hunting and gun clubs, riding academy, broadcast towers, kennels, but they're not asking for those conditional uses.
Mr. Carpenter, there's a lawsuit on this very item. And I questioned it when it came before the Planning Commission, that should we even be voting on it at the Planning Commission? And I was told yes. So with the pending lawsuit that's out there, should the board be voting on 17 and 14?
Vice Mayor Waring, the lawsuit I know of dealt with who owned the property and was a contest over fulfillment of a mortgage. In that case, what our ordinances provide is that the owner of the property is the one that can request a zoning change, and absent an objection from the challenging party, I don't see any reason you wouldn't consider it. That said, once you give an AF zoning classification, everything that's in that can be done, which is one of the reasons that y'all require or request planned developments that have the features of a particular zoning classification, but don't put them all in there. So the answer is no, I don't think we should not consider it because there's a lawsuit, because I don't think the lawsuit at this point deals with anybody objecting to what the use is going to be. And if you get a planning request and you don't act on it within a certain period of time, that in and of itself can become a taking, and you don't want to get into that either.
My concern has been each time that we've looked at this on behalf of the city, that whatever our determination is in regards to moving it to AF might help or hurt the lawsuit that's pending.
Yeah, I just don't see how that would be a factor in and of itself right now. Now, what's going to happen to the authority of the city to do any extraterritorial zoning? That's a major issue, and I think it would be appropriate to wait until the legislature leaves and find out if we have any jurisdiction. Because if we don't, there's no sense in acting on it.
Yeah, Mr. Turner, that's why I'm trying to get us to talk about a lot of this after the
Right,
meeting.
right.
One more thing, and it's not toward item 17, but I believe item 16 is in Ward 7 instead of Ward 6. If I know where the ward boundaries are, this is going to be south of Colonel Glenn
Yes.
and east of Bowman Road, and I think I go to 36th Street and then follow Panther Creek up north. So I believe this is in Ward 7 instead of Ward 6,
Okay.
item number 15.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. We'll make that correction.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hines?
Yeah, I'd just like a presentation on number 12.
Mr. Givens, you want to?
Mayor and Board of Directors. Director Hines, this is a property at 6317 West Markham. And we've been dealing with this for a couple of years, specifically when it closed down. And they attempted to try to keep it boarded and secured, and of course, that's been a problem. And there was a permit issued back in '23 for a building permit. Well, they extended it in June of '24. There's been no activity at that site since that time, so we revoked the permit in February because of lack of work.
Okay, who's the owner of that property? I was just curious. I thought,
Jared Coleman is listed as the owner.
okay,
There's a number of lien holders involved. There's about 12 different lien holders and lawyers and attorneys, so it's a quite extensive list of owners.
is the building sound structurally other than having the issue with the, I know we've had some issues with them fencing it and the homeless get.
Well, they broke in a number of times into the building, and they destroyed a lot of the inside of it. We're not real sure, the integrity. It was leaking at one time, so that's kind of where we are with it right now.
Thanks.
All right, any more? Director Miller?
Yes, thank you. Brad, let me ask you on the withdrawn ordinance number 22 that dealt with Ringo. There's a lot of people that are curious about that.
Yes, sir.
To ask me, when something is withdrawn, does that mean they can bring it back up? Is that permanent, or when they withdraw it, it has to go back through the whole process of going back through the planning commission?
If they withdraw it, they would have to go back to the planning commission if they were not doing anything that was not allowed by right in that zone.
Okay, so I can tell the people that are curious about this that this has been permanent withdrawn at this point, and if they wanted to bring it back up for this particular zoning again, they have to go back before the planning commission and everything else.
Yes, sir, that is true. But the way I understand it is they plan to develop the lot the way that the R4 standard
Would
allows.
allow them to do.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, also on item 18, we got a late notice that they want to defer that till April 15th.
We'll notate that, thank you. Any questions for items 28 through 32? You got a question, Director Wyatt? Director Wyatt?
My question deals with the ordinance on the Little Rock Stormwater and Drainage Manual.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Get my glasses on so I can see. Talk to me about the review process. Antoine did an email today and kind of brought that to my attention. And that is that we have a resolution that's approved, and then we have some sort of situation that is set up where there is a review process between you and the development. If you look at the stormwater manual, items 1 through 7 deal with water flows and 100-year and all that kind of stuff. And then section 18 deals with the water quality.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we're talking about reviewing an issue that's expensive or whatever might come out of it, are we saying that the whole stormwater manual is subject to this review? Or are we only picking certain pieces of it that they can appeal to you for review?
I think there are only certain projects that would fall under that, what would be a grandfathered in clause. But I believe Mr. Carpenter also has some other language that,
And I think
deals with.
we're right in sending it to the planning commission and then to the board. I mean, I think that's right. I don't think Antoine does, but I think that's the right way to go. I've seen some of these policies where, we've got a complaint from a developer or an issue with the developer, and it comes to the planning director, and then we don't agree, and then the mayor gets a call, or I get a call, and we get into some sort of a dispute. So that's what I'm trying to understand. How does that review work? And then what would be situations that would make it rise to this level?
Vice Mayor Warwick, I think the reason I interrupt is because after yesterday's conversation at a meeting, the language that's in the ordinance before you has been changed substantially, or it's going to be changed substantially. What we were trying to do is to deal with a situation where if we get a new stormwater manual in that requires X, and somebody's already in the process of developing something but doesn't have their building permits, are we going to make them redo all of their plans to come into compliance with the new one? What came out of yesterday's meeting, and there's still a major aspect that has to be looked at, but what came out of yesterday's meeting is that what we would do is we would choose a date, whether it's the date the ADEQ accepts our manual, whether it's a different date, whether it's the date of a new permit. That's the part that has to still be worked out. Parties would be given 6 months to prepare and submit a sketch, which is not an official preliminary plat. And within, and at the end of that 6 months, if they haven't done the sketch, they're going to be dealing with whatever the new permit requires or whatever the new stormwater plan requires. Once that is done, though, they will be given at least 12 months, this is the number we came up with yesterday, to get that plan into the process to be approved. Now, there's a tweak. Does it need to be approved in that time, or does it just need to be in the process to be approved? I kind of like the latter, because I just don't want to have somebody on the last day not get before the meeting for some reason, and then we've gone through all this work for nothing. We had a discussion today, or I had a discussion today with the legal staff for ADEQ, and basically what they said is, if you're looking at 6 months and then maybe a year, that probably shouldn't be too hard. If you're looking at 5 years, that's going to be hard. Well, we're just trying to get a time to say, nobody walks in today and says, I want to build a subdivision.
Right.
They've already done a lot of work. They've done a lot of financial commitments that they need to make. So what this provision was trying to do was to answer that question in response to a desire for a grandfather-in clause.
Okay.
What's in the ordinance before you right now isn't even close to what we're going to recommend.
Okay, and that's what
ultimately.
Director Hines was trying to tell me, but I thought he was talking about something different, but you're.
With that being, just to keep us on task,
But this
we-
all has to deal with the date certain for this
And the process.
stormwater approval. Okay, I was thinking on a different level. So I'm sorry, Director Hines, I should have shut up, but I was on a different level. I'm thinking this is somebody that's coming into us after the stormwater manual goes into play, and they've not done anything ahead of time. They hadn't done
No.
preliminary plats, or they haven't done,
No, ma'am.
any work at all. I'm thinking this is somebody that comes in after the stormwater manual comes into effect, that has got a piece of property that it costs too much, or there's all sorts of reasons why they can't follow the manual, and we're gonna sit down and talk to them and come up with a plan. I get it, okay? I'm sorry, Director Hines. I should have not asked the question. But I was really on a different wavelength there. Okay.
All right, thank you.
I'll wait for the rest of it.
Yeah. Director Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor. And I have a suggestion about this. I know you're working on a version of the ordinance that we hadn't seen yet, that we're gonna get later this week, I will presume.
It would be a resolution now instead of an ordinance.
Right, a resolution. Does it make sense for us to defer this and then have a special call meeting on the 25th to make sure we get it done by the 31st?
Yes.
Okay, so we can't do that?
Yes.
Okay. So that's my suggestion, just so we
So
have more
everyone gets
time.
it.
We could potentially just recess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's multiple ways.
but we want to make certain everyone gets a chance to get their eyes on it.
Right.
Ultimately.
Right. So, thank you, Mayor, but I suggest we do that so we have time to look at
And we
everything.
got a deadline.
We definitely will make the deadline, because we
March
don't want to
31st.
be charged $10,000 a day.
That's right. Okay.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Seeing nothing else?
I got something. Am I
Vice
still
Mayor
on?
Wyrick, then
Yeah.
Director.
Um,
Oh, one second. Now you got it.
Director Webb had to leave, but she left me a flyer with some notes on what she wanted to talk about. But the Sustainability Office is looking for a nomination for a Sustainability Champion. And this is somebody that's a person, a business, or a group that's making Little Rock greener and more equitable. And they're wanting us to nominate them. And it's somebody that would follow sustainability practices and policies, impact, advocacy, reducing pollution, protecting habitats, educating and mobilizing the community. And the nominations, with the award is the 2025 Sustain the Rock Award. The nominations close on April the 18th. And the Sustainability Commission votes to choose the nominees. And there's a form online. She says it's easy, do-it-yourself type of form that you can fill out. And it's at the littlerock.gov website. And if you go in and look, she says that you can see the past winners. And this is a program that's been into place since 2012. So look at that website and nominate people that could be a sustainability champion. It's courtesy of Director Webb.
Thank you. Director Peck?
Thank you. I just want to briefly thank everybody that showed up for our big cleanup on Saturday. Director Lewis, Vice Mayor Wyrick, Kathy was there. I think we had over 600 volunteers throughout the city. And I wanted to thank Willie, but he's gone, for securing an ATV for some gimped up people to clean up Fush Creek, me being one of the gimps.
Thank you so much. Meeting adjourned.